I'm back for another Gren Twigs video. In the last one, we went over these type signatures. We added type signatures to all our functions. And I touched on the fact that it might look a little strange if you're not used to this, that there's this list of types separated by arrows, and you just kind of have to know that the last one is the return value. There's not a distinction between, you know, what's a parameter, what's a return value. It's just there's a list of parameters, and the last one is the return value. That's fine to think about it that way. I did say that I would get into it in the next video, and that next video is the now video. It's the video you're watching. I'm gonna talk about this, and one of the reasons it looks like this is the fact that in Gren, functions are automatically curried. What that means is when you have a function in Gren that has multiple parameters, you can think about it and treat it as if it is actually a series of functions that each take one parameter. To explain that, I'm going to show you in something called the Gren REPL. This is if you have Gren installed, you can run this REPL command, and you get this nice little command line interface where you can run single lines of Gren and try it out, get the return value, experiment with things. This is where I'm going to show you. Try to explain currying to you here. You're also going to need Node installed to run this, so make sure you have that. To explain this, I'm going to make a function called sum. It has two parameters, a and b, and it will just add them together. And you can see Gren inferred the types for us here. It sees that we're adding a and b together. You can only do that with numbers, so a and b have to be numbers. And it's telling us that sum is a function with a number parameter and another number parameter, and it returns a number. We can call it the way you'd expect. However, you can also think about this function as a function that takes a number and returns another function that takes a number and returns a number. For example, if I just call sum with 1 by itself, I don't get back a number, I get back a function that takes a number and returns a number. It's because I called sum with a number and I got back another function that takes a number and returns a number. So that's what I have here, and I can call it like that. My sum1 function, I can call that with 3, and it adds 1. So I can actually capture that. So I can make a new function called sum5 that is a function that I get by calling sum with just the number 5. So sum5 is the result of calling sum with the number 5. And as you can see, is a new function that takes a number, returns a number. In case you ever need to add 5 to something, you have a handy function for it. Now, look at that, easy peasy. That to hammer this home, let me make one more function. I'll make a real big one. Sum a, b, c, d, adds them all together. And now I have a function that takes 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters and returns a number. If I call it with just one number, I get a new function. It's this function. If I call it with 2 numbers, I get back this function. If I call it with 3 numbers, I get back this function. And if I call it with all 4 numbers, and remember, this is the same concept as if I was just calling this function with the number 4. It's the same thing. Now, in practice, you don't always have to think about things like this. You don't have to really sort of deeply understand it. It does help though, and to explain why it's like this and where it comes into practice, I'm going to go back to the code and I'm going to look at the update function. So I've got the Gren package site pulled up because that's got documentation on it. If you just go to packages.grenlang.org, navigate to the, actually, let me show you. So you go to packages.grenlang.org, find the browser package. That's what we're using to make our browser app. We're looking at the sandbox function, and this is the type signature. So it is a record. The update field wants a function that takes a message in a model and returns a model. And look at that. That is what we are doing. We are setting update to a function that takes a message and a model and returns a model. Now, let's say we have a website that's a little bit more complicated. It doesn't just have a clicker that goes up and down by 1. It's got all sorts of clickers, and some of them go up and down by 1, some go up and down by 5. Who knows? Let's modify this a bit add a new parameter, and this is going to be the cadence of our clicker. It's going to go up and down by some arbitrary integer that we assign. Not 1, it's going up and down by n. Before I save this, let me get my compiler running. Okay. When I do save this, it's going to complain, obviously, because I'm no longer adhering to this type signature. It's not message model model. Now it's int message model model. What's going on? Gren's confused. To fix that, we will go ahead and pass a number here, and it compiles. Why does it compile? Because what we're doing here, we're setting update to the result of calling this update function with the number 5. When I call update with the number 5, I get back a function that takes a message and a model and returns a model, which is what the sandbox function expects. And our applications should still work, but now it goes up and down by 5. Amazing. So this is kind of, again, kind of a silly example, but you'll encounter this more as you start getting into like functions that pipe into other functions, functions that take functions. Maybe you're working on an interface or an abstraction or something, or making a package. This stuff's going to come into more play, and we'll get into more of that in later videos. But for now, that's sort of the fundamental concept of why the function signatures look like this, what it means for these functions to be curried. And the last thing I forgot, I had a tab open here that I wanted to show. On GitHub, if you go to Blake/Gren Twigs, this is where I'm going to start pushing the changes we make to these code samples. So if you ever want to come check it out, you can have it all there instead of trying to type it all out by watching the videos. And that is all. Thank you.